Good afternoon. Today we will study about the conjunctive adverbs when and if as subordinating conjunctions. As we've studied about the pronouns and a determiner that are applied as a subordinating conjunction, we will study about the other subordinating conjunctions that have the trait of an adverb. So, what is good to review before we study about the other adverbs is to think of the role of an adverb. An adverb is a kind of descriptions, and this descriptive word, the adverb, describes the other descriptions, like a verb for a verb that is a description for a subject in a sentence, and a determiner and an adjective for as a description for an indication. And the other adverb that describes the adverb that describes the other adverbs, or the determiner, the adjective, or the verb. And this adverb can describe the definition of a verb in the other clause. So this can be a linkage for the two clauses. So in this linkage by the descriptive adverb for the other verb, the verb in the other clause reveals the logical relationship between the two clauses, because the adverb to link the two clauses has its own definition. There are so many conjunctive adverbs, and in this class we will study about when and if that reveal the hint, that reveal the cues about the time for actualizing the definition of each verb in each clause. So we can say that the tense matters in this class. If I briefly say about the content of this class, I will say something like this. The conjunctive adverb when links the two clauses by the concurrency. The definition of each verb actualizes at the same time. Concurrency, but there is no logical relationship. Just the speaker who couldn't figure out the logical relationship between the two experiences, conditions, or actions tell that the two events happen by a coincidence. Like when I open the door, a bird flies. Something like that. When we get deeper to reveal the logical relationship, we can say something more like this. When I close the door, the sound surprises the bird, so the bird flew. The bird flies away. We could say something more like this, but before we get down to reveal the logical relationship, we can just say that the two events happen by concurrency. This is how the conjunctive adverb when is applied in, and the conjunctive adverb if tells us about a condition, or we can say an assumption. The conjunctive adverb if is included in the clause A. We can say it, we can suppose it. And the clause B is linked with the clause A and the conjunctive adverb if. So in this sentence, we can say that the truth, whether the definition of the verb in the clause A is actualized as truth, we say that the definition of the verb in the clause B is actualized as the other truth. So if A, the first clause is true, the second clause B, the clause B, the main clause is true. And we can say that this is a conditional sentence, but we can also say this is an assumption for saying something that is not true yet. Okay, let's study from the definition. The speaker reveals the logical relationship between the experience, condition, or action that describes each subject in the two clauses with the conjunctive adverbs in a clause to specify the definition of the verb in the other clause, because the adverb can describe a verb in the same clause, a determiner or an adjective, the other adverb, and a verb in the other clause. This tells us about the conjunctive adverb. And this explanation also tells about the first case. The clause to include a verb that the conjunctive adverb describes is the main clause. The clause that includes the conjunctive adverb and starts with the conjunctive adverb is the subordinate clause. This explanation is about the way to identify the subordinate clause and the main clause. The main clause is stated without the conjunctive adverb, and the subordinate clause is linked by the conjunctive adverb to the main clause, just like the relative pronoun and the relative determiner. There is an example. You saw the cookie after I told you about a cookie. In this sentence, we find that the two verbs are stated, saw and told, and both verbs are stated in the past tense, in the past simple tense. And there is a period or full stop. This tells us that there is a conjunction after, because there is only a verb in a clause, and there is a conjunctive adverb. Then we can say that after I told you about a cookie is the subordinate clause, and the entire clause exists to describe the definition of the transitive verb saw in the main clause. And after, the conjunctive adverb describes the definition of the transitive verb saw. So the definition of the transitive verb saw happened later than the definition of the transitive verb told. Okay, let's read the explanation. The transitive verb saw to indicate the action of the listeners as the subject in the main clause is the subject to start the definition of the conjunctive adverb after. As the preposition, one of the adverbs mediates the subject and object, and the conjunctive adverb mediates the main clause as the subject and the subordinate clause as the object. Like this is the way to identify the subject of the conjunctive adverb. Subject means the subject starts or definition of a descriptive word. After a conjunction is also a descriptive word. So the verb of the main clause, saw, is described by the conjunctive adverb after. So we can say that the definition of the conjunctive adverb after belongs to the transitive verb saw. So we can say that there are two parts. This one is the prior one. This is the previous one. This is the later one. This is the later one. So after belongs to saw. So the definition of the transitive verb saw belongs to the later one. So the definition of the transitive verb told inevitably belongs to the part in the previous part. The action of the listeners indicated by the transitive verb saw in the main clause conveys the definition of the conjunctive adverb after to the object. That is the action of the speaker indicated by the transitive verb told in the subordinate clause. There is a conference. After I told you about a cookie, you saw the cookie. In this sentence, the speaker states the subordinate clause at first. And we always remember that the speaker delivers the main intent in the main clause. That's the reason why the term main clause exists. Then the speaker states the subordinate clause at first because by the speaker's intent, then the speaker clarifies the fact that the speaker states the subordinate clause earlier than the main clause by his or her own intent and by this comma. This tells us that the subordinate clause is stated ahead of the main clause. The speaker conveys the main intention that the speaker intends to convey in the sentence with the main clause. So the speaker who states the subordinate clause ahead of the main clause reveals that the main clause starts to be stated with a punctuation mark or comma. Okay, in the next class we will study about the role of the conjunctive adverbs. Thank you for watching.